I've always been a bit of an oddball in my neighborhood. With my tattoos, beard, and Harley, I don't exactly fit the suburban mold, but I've never cared much about that. I work from home as a freelance graphic designer, which gives me the freedom to live life on my own terms. My girlfriend moved in with me a few months ago, and we've been loving every minute of it. We're both laid-back people who enjoy the simple things in life: good food, cold beer, and classic video games. Life was pretty sweet until Karen moved in next door. From day one, Karen made it clear she didn't approve of us. She'd glare at us whenever we were outside, mutter under her breath about lowering property values, and even called the Homeowners Association to complain about the most ridiculous things. But we tried to ignore her and live our lives. One evening, my girlfriend and I decided to enjoy the nice weather by playing some video games on our front deck. I holed out the TV, we grabbed a couple of beers, and settled in for some Mario Kart 64. The best one if you ask me. We were having a great time when Karen got home. She walked over to us with an angry face. Karen demanded to know what we thought we were doing. I calmly replied that we were just enjoying our evening. Karen then ordered us to take all our stuff and my witch inside, insisting it wasn't the place for such things. That was it. I'd had enough of her constant harassment. I stood up, feeling my temper rise. I told Karen to shut her mouth and get off my property, or I'd drag her off myself. Karen laughed, saying I had no idea what was going on. She claimed she saw cars and people going into our home all day when I was supposed to be at work. I angrily told her it was none of her business and to leave. Karen waddled back to her house in a hurry when she saw how angry I was. About 30 minutes later, the cops showed up because of her complaint, but they couldn't do anything since we weren't breaking any laws. The next day, I was supposed to go on a bike ride with my crew, but after the incident with Karen, I had a better idea. I called up my buddy Bruce. We call him Hot Dog because he's a hot dog vendor in downtown Toronto, and told him about the change of plans. Bruce spread the word to the rest of our friends. Around 1 p.m., 6 very loud Harleys pulled up in my driveway. The whole house shook. It was beautiful. My friends were all big, burly guys covered in tattoos, except for Frost, who's a short dude. We set up a full-size poker table on the front lawn and cranked up the music. When Karen came out of her house, we all started booing her. She stood there, jaw dropped, before retreating back inside. We went back to enjoying ourselves. It wasn't long before the cops showed up again. Picture this: 7 big, burly, mostly bearded and tattooed men sitting shirtless in short shorts around a poker table. We had money on the table, were smoking weed, and drinking beers. All perfectly legal as long as we were at least 5 feet away from the public sidewalk. The cops were visibly annoyed. They tried to get us to do what Karen wanted, but my buddy Campbell, we call him Soup Boy, who's a criminal defense lawyer, quickly shut that down. I told the cops that if they didn't do something about Karen, we'd be doing this every single day. The cops went to talk to Karen, who came out fake crying and screaming at us. That's when we decided to turn on the sprinklers. So now you had Karen throwing a fit, frustrated cops, and 7 big tattooed guys in short shorts prancing through sprinklers with Backstreet Boys blasting in the background. When the cops came back, we informed them we'd be there all day and waved goodbye, telling them we'd see them tomorrow. Karen closed all her curtains and disappeared inside. As the day went on, my 70-year-old neighbor from the other side came out to see what was going on. He's an old-school hippie and gets harassed by Karen a lot too. He ended up sitting down and sharing a joint with us, even promising to bring some of his homegrown weed the next day. My friends called taxis to go back to their hotels, but we all agreed. We're doing this again tomorrow. Karen might have thought she could bully us into submission, but she had no idea who she was messing with. We're not just going to roll over and let her dictate how we live our lives. If she wants a war, she's got one. And trust me, we know how to have a good time while fighting it. I had just finished my shift at the office one day, overseeing our security operations for local businesses. Being only 25, I sometimes feel the weight of responsibility on my shoulders, but I've always been driven to protect others. That's what led me to this career in the first place. As I walked into the store still in my security uniform, I noticed an elderly gentleman struggling with his shopping cart. My instincts kicked in immediately. I approached him and politely offered my assistance with his shopping. The elderly man gratefully accepted my offer, expressing his appreciation. We struck up a friendly conversation as we made our way through the aisles. He told me about his recent surgery and his new pacemaker. The elderly man marveled at the advancements in technology, explaining how the small device helps keep his heart beating correctly. I responded with amazement, expressing my happiness that the device was helping him stay healthy. Everything was going smoothly until we turned into the next aisle. That's when all hell broke loose. Out of nowhere, a woman came barreling around the corner with her shopping cart, ramming straight into the elderly gentleman. He fell to the ground with a thud, and I immediately sprang into action. I yelled at the woman, demanding to know if she couldn't see where she was going. I helped the elderly man up, checking if he was okay. But before he could answer, the woman, let's call her Karen, started mouthing off. She accused me of trying to look like a hero and insisted that the elderly man could take care of himself. I shouted back at her, pointing out the man's advanced age and questioning her intelligence in a rather colorful manner. That's when things got even crazier. Karen, in all her entitled glory, tried to hit me with her handbag, but her aim was as poor as her attitude, and she ended up striking the elderly man in the chest. He collapsed again, this time with a pained expression on his face. I anxiously asked the elderly man if he was all right and what was wrong. The poor man could barely speak. I turned to Karen, fury in my eyes, and demanded to know what was in her bag. Karen nonchalantly replied that it contained something very strong, questioning why I cared. Her response pushed me over the edge. I let loose a string of curses that would make a sailor blush. How could someone be so callous and reckless? While giving first aid to the elderly man, I shouted at nearby customers and employees and urgently requested someone to call an ambulance and instructed them not to let the woman leave, stating that we would be calling the police as well. The next few minutes were a blur. The ambulance arrived within 3 minutes, whisking the elderly man away. 2 minutes later, the police showed up and arrested Karen. I gave my statement, still shaking with anger and worry. In the days that followed, I stayed in touch with the elderly man's family. We were all relieved to hear that his life was out of danger, but it had been a close call. The incident left me shaken, realizing how quickly things can go wrong. But life has a funny way of balancing things out. While checking up on the elderly man's condition, I met his granddaughter. She's around 23 and communicates through sign language. We hit it off immediately, bonding over our shared concern for her grandfather and our mutual disgust at Karen's behavior. Thanks to the store's security cameras and multiple witness accounts, Karen was charged with assault and reckless endangerment. The judge, unimpressed by her entitled attitude, sentenced her to community service at a retirement home. Poetic justice, if you ask me. The elderly man made a full recovery, and I still visit him occasionally. He jokes that he owes me a lifetime supply of hard candies for saving his life. His granddaughter and I have been dating for a few weeks now, learning to communicate in new ways and enjoying each other's company. Looking back, I realize that being in the right place at the right time and having the courage to stand up against injustice can lead to unexpected turns in life. Who would have thought that a routine trip to the grocery store would end up changing so many lives? But that's the thing about life. You never know what's waiting for you around the next corner. I was just your average 17-year-old college freshman, trying to juggle classes, a part-time job, and the usual teenage drama. My parents lived over an hour away, so I was pretty much on my own most of the time. It wasn't easy, but I was managing. That fateful day, I'd been cramming for a big exam and decided to grab a Red Bull from the local gas station to keep me going. Little did I know this simple errand was about to turn into a nightmare. As I walked into the store, I noticed the owner giving me a strange look. I didn't think much of it at the time. I mean, I was used to people thinking I was older than I actually was. It was both a blessing and a curse, really. I headed straight for the coolers, picked up a big 20 ounces can of Red Bull, and started making my way to the counter. That's when things got weird. The owner called out asking if I had clocked in yet. I didn't think he was talking to me, so I just kept walking. Suddenly, this guy who had to be at least 50 years old was right in my face. I'm talking uncomfortably close. I immediately took a step back, raising my hands instinctively. The owner then started yelling at me, demanding that I get to the back and put on my work shirt. He scolded me for drinking the store's goods while on the clock and reminded me about the dress code. I was completely blindsided and I could feel panic setting in. I tried to explain, but the words came out all jumbled. I stammered something about him mistaking me for someone else, but I'm not even sure if that's exactly what I said. The adrenaline was pumping so hard I could barely hear myself think. I turned to leave, almost forgetting about the Red Bull still in my hand. That's when I felt a hard yank on my shoulder. The owner shouted at me to come back. Something inside me snapped. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was anger, or maybe it was just pure instinct. Whatever it was, I reacted without thinking. I spun around and hurled the Red Bull can right at his face. He let go of me and ducked, giving me the chance I needed to bolt out the door. Once outside, I stood by my car watching the store entrance like a hawk. I didn't have a cell phone, so I felt completely stranded. I had no idea what to do next. Then, as if the universe decided to throw me a lifeline, two things happened at once. The owner came stumbling out of the store, and a police car pulled into the parking lot. The cop inside looked like he was just stopping for a snack, but to me, he might as well have been my guardian angel. The owner's demeanor changed instantly when he saw the cop. He started apologizing profusely, tripping over his words. He explained that there had been a terrible misunderstanding, claiming that one of his employees had called out sick, but he hadn't received the message. He insisted that I looked just like her. I wasn't buying it. His apology seemed more about saving his own skin than actually being sorry for what he'd done. I insisted we show the cop the security footage. The owner tried to downplay the situation, saying that the camera angle wouldn't show much and that reviewing the footage wasn't necessary. But I stood my ground. The cop reviewed the tape, and let me tell you, it showed everything clear as day. My parents were called and we decided to press assault charges. The owner lost his business and spent 4 months in prison. Turns out, assaulting a minor is a pretty big deal, even if it was a misunderstanding. As for the woman I supposedly looked like, I never met her, but I hope she found a better place to work after all this went down. And me? Well, I switched to coffee after that. Red Bull just brought back too many memories. I always struggled with self-esteem. My parents were never really there for me emotionally, and I was bullied a lot in school. By the time I got to college, I was desperate for any kind of connection or relationship. That's how I ended up with him. We met in our freshman year. He seemed nice at first, and I was just happy someone was paying attention to me. When he mentioned he couldn't get a cell phone plan due to lack of credit, I didn't think twice about adding him to mine. He promised to pay his share and I wanted to help. He confidently assured me that he would pay me back each month. I felt good about helping him out and told him that was great. But things weren't as rosy as they seemed at first. Whenever we went out in public, he acted like he didn't want to be seen with me. Our dates always revolved around his interests: wrestling events, card game shops, music stores. If I suggested something I wanted to do, he'd shut it down immediately. I suggested trying a new restaurant I'd been wanting to visit for dinner. He refused, saying he wasn't in the mood, and suggested getting fast food before going to the card shop instead. When I pointed out that we always did what he wanted, he dismissed my concerns and insisted he needed to buy new magic cards. And so it went over and over. At his wrestling events, he'd completely ignore me. I was just there to record his matches, nothing more. When his friends came around, he'd act like I didn't exist. His friend complimented him on his match, and he thanked him, mentioning his practice. When I tried to introduce myself, he cut me off and changed the subject to a new move he had performed. I kept making excuses for his behavior, telling myself I was lucky to have anyone at all. But things got worse when I found out he'd been talking to another girl for the first 6 months we were together. I confronted him about the other girl being his backup plan. He brushed it off as no big deal, saying he just wanted to keep his options open. When I expressed my hurt, he told me I was overreacting and that nothing had happened. That should have been the last straw, but I still held on. Until I found out about the other girl he was working on art projects with. I questioned him about hanging out at another girl's house without telling me. He claimed they were just friends and accused me of being jealous. When I explained that I was upset because he was hiding things from me, he dismissed it as drama he didn't need. That's when I finally ended it. But even after we broke up, he kept mooching off my cell phone plan. He'd stopped paying his share months ago, and now he was just taking advantage. I told him he needed to get his own plan, because I couldn't keep paying for his phone. He claimed he didn't have the money, and asked for more time. When I pointed out that he had money for wrestling figures and magic cards, but not for his phone bill, he tried to argue that it was different and pleaded with me not to be difficult. I'd had enough. Without telling him, I called the provider and had his line removed from my account. When he messaged me on social media about his phone not working, I played dumb. He messaged me saying his phone wasn't working and asked what was going on. I pretended mine was having issues too and said I'd check with the provider. The next day, he asked for an update on the phone situation. I lied, saying there was an accidental suspension when I tried to adjust my plan and that it would take another day to sort out. A few days later, he messaged again asking about our phones. I told him my plan had been cancelled entirely and I had to open a new account without him on it. He was shocked and angry, saying I couldn't do that because he needed his number. I explained it wasn't my responsibility anymore and he'd have to get his own plan. When he complained about how much it would cost to get his number back, I sarcastically remarked it would probably cost about as much as all the wrestling figures he bought instead of paying his share of the bill. I blocked him after that. Last I heard, he had to pay a $500 deposit to recover his number. It took time, but I finally realized I deserved better than what he was giving me.